past 30 days, we generated $150 million in sales. In the past month, we've collected 8 million emails.
A couple tweaks can take that form from 3% to 9%. That's a triple in the amount of subscribers that you're getting onto your email list.
We work with over 1,300 brands. We have a lot of knowledge as to what works well and what doesn't work well.
Yo. So today we want to give as much value to e-commerce brands and marketers as possible, specifically in how to lower your cost per acquisition by getting the most out of your website traffic. So today we have the expert, probably the guy to talk to on this. We have Sean, who essentially what he does is he builds pop-ups that turns curious website visitors that you pay so much on ads into email and SMS subscribers, which are going to convert at a higher rate into buyers. So Sean, to start off, can you tell me how much revenue your app and your software has helped generate?
Yeah, sure. So past 30 days, we generated $150 million in sales, in attributed sales, essentially. Probably since the start of the company, it's been over $500 million in sales. And in the past month, we've collected 8 million emails. All time, I think it's 27 million emails. So it's been good.
Holy cow. That's crazy. All right. Well, let's step back a little bit and talk a little bit about the background of the brand. 150 mil in the past 30 days is wild. But okay, why don't you just give us a little bit of a rundown of exactly what is Alia? What is the platform? Who's like the ideal brand that you work with? And just a little bit of background and context before we jump into some questions and bring some actual value.
Yeah, for sure. So what we do at Alia is super simple. And we've kind of done that pretty intentionally. We just do pop-ups. I think the best tools agencies are the ones who do one thing and do that one thing extraordinarily well. That's what we do. So we do pop-ups, right? That's all we care about. And we strive to be the best at that one thing. Thinking about why are our pop-ups better? Number one, our team actually manages the pop-ups. So we'll create the pop-ups, run the A/B tests, do copy, creatives, all that good stuff. And since we work with over 1,300 brands, we have a lot of knowledge as to what works well and what doesn't work well. So that's part of it. Another big part is use AI to actually trigger the pop-ups at the right times, right? Think about like a site visitor that comes onto the site. They're probably going to X out of the pop-up if you show it to them right away. But if you show it to them for a second time after they X out, they're quite likely to enter their email or SMS. Using AI to like figure out when should we show the pop-ups, which copy, which content. And it's kind of a one-to-one experience, honestly. But obviously, with like having 1,300 brands, it's like at a macro level, it works well. And then at a micro level for each customer, it like shows them at the right time, the right content, the right messaging. So it's like a pretty interesting way to think about pop-ups.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure, I mean, no offense here, but I don't know if you grew up when you were 8 years old being like, okay, I want to have a pop-up form software. So I'm curious, like, what was like the conception of the company? And it's just like, okay, we're gonna do pop-ups. I'd be curious to hear that because I don't think I've heard you touch on that before.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good question. So essentially, like in college, I was actually building a tool for my university. It was essentially like something I was building for a club where we help students learn more about specific companies and get rewarded for it. So I was kind of in the gamification space. I thought like the rewards in general could be elevated. And I think like the rewards experience could always be made like better. And it is a pretty huge market. So, I was essentially like I have a CS degree, so I was building out this app in college for my university. And then I was like, hey, I think this could actually be applied more broadly to maybe the e-commerce world. I started learning more about e-commerce, realized that pop-ups are a pretty low-hanging fruit that most brands are not optimizing. However, if you can increase the amount of subscribers you get, you can make a lot more money, as I'm sure Max has told you guys a million times. But and yeah, I was like, hey, let's attack this one problem and let's do it the best that it's ever been done before.
100%. Awesome. Yeah, I love asking that because a lot of people ask me like, how do I get into email marketing? It's not like I live and breathe email marketing. Like I don't really care too much about it. I don't want to be doing email marketing till I die. But it's like, it solves like a helpful problem, and you're able to like grow businesses this way. And that's a lot of what pop-up forms do. And you said it exactly. Like they are such a low hanging fruit because so many brands, you think like, oh, it's just a pop-up form. And you're like, do people don't even use those really. But the thing is, like, if you just use a regular templated pop-up form, which most brands do, they just take a template off of Klaviyo or whatever, put it up, hey, 10%, here you go. Enter your email address. The thing is, like, most of those forms are going to convert like 3% of website traffic into email subscribers. But literally, if you spend just a couple minutes just like optimizing that and using the knowledge that you have over doing over like 500 mil in revenue, a couple tweaks can take that form from 3% to 9%. 100%. And what did that do? 3% to 9% doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a triple in the amount of subscribers that you're getting onto your email list. That's a triple of the amount of data that you're getting from your ad traffic without having to spend more. And that's why pop-ups are so key. If you could like summarize, because I talked a little bit about like why have a pop-up, but like if somebody asks you, some brand who's growing, they're spending money on ads a bit, and they're like, why should I even have a pop-up form? I think it's gonna annoy my list, or I don't see the value in pop-up forms. Kind of what would be your response to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's also fair to think that without like having the knowledge, right? So it's like, I never fault anyone for thinking that because I understand that from a consumer side. Thinking about it like this, when you have a pop-up, your conversion rate goes up on your site. So like simply by adding a pop-up, your conversion rate goes up, right? Now think about if you can optimize that pop-up, you can then optimize further on your conversion rate. So a simple, easy lift is like, let's have a pop-up good. Let's have a pop-up be better than what it was before, even better. You're actually going to increase conversion rates on your site. Number two is that it's a pretty standard customer journey. So customers understand that like, hey, okay, this pop-up thing exists. And let's say they see it, but they close out right away. At least they know that it's there, right? So you have it like kind of as a sticky button on the left or right-hand side. This is like get 10% off. So they know it's there. Right, and then they're more likely to actually go ahead and make that purchase because they're like, oh, okay, like this looks interesting, and I know in my back pocket, it's still on the site, I have the ability to grab that coupon. Whereas if you had never shown one, or if they never had one, they might be like, like this is expensive, and I don't know where to pull a coupon from. Like I have no resources to save money on this product. Like I might not shop.
Mm-hmm. And one thing, I have a couple things that I want to go off of that. One thing that you said is, it helps conversion rates on the website. Me as the email marketer, like I hear brands like an objection for like a pop-up. If they don't have a pop-up, they're like, I don't want to hurt my website conversion rates. What sort of data have you seen like that, or any sort of like experience or anecdotes on, you have a pop on your website and then the overall conversion rate increases?
Super clear example is like Hostage Tape, the mallet tape brand. They're pretty cool. They've been a client for like 7 months. They wanted to do a holdout test on one of their LPs, not showing a pop-up and then showing a pop-up. During the holdout test, we saw an increase of conversion rate when they had the pop-up of 15%. So like it went from like whatever, let's have easy numbers, like to 1 to 1.15, right? So like, I mean, yeah, like you can do a holdout and just see what the difference is. And I can pretty much guarantee if the pop-up is like relatively optimized, by having it on, you'll see an increase in CVR.
Yeah, 100%. And do you think that mostly is because of people, it's in the back of their head that they have this like discount, or do you think they're more like committed to the brand once they engage with like a form, or what would you say that reason is?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's both of those, right? I think like there's one side of like, all right, like I've already taken some action on the site. Like I'm like, okay, like I've done something, right? It's like, yeah, you already kind of bought in. Even if it's as simple as entering your email or SMS and confirming your SMS, like that's an action someone intentionally took. By taking that action, they're then more likely to go ahead and make a conversion. So yeah, that's a really interesting play that we use here and that we've seen. And then yeah, the second just being like, okay, like I'm more likely to convert because I know that I don't have to pay full price because there's a pop-up thing that exists somewhere on the site and I can go find it and put my email in and I'll get a discount.
Yeah, 100%. That's something that I don't hear too many people talk about, is the sort of like commitment bias at play there, which psychologically in humans, once you start doing something, you're like already bought in and you have your feet in the door. So if a customer, say they're looking for a cool sweater like the one you're wearing right now, and they're checking out a couple different brands, and they're like, okay, what kind of sweater am I going to get? They go to like 3 brand websites. 2 of them don't have a pop-up. 1 of them does. And they happen to enter their email address on the one that had that pop-up. They're going to be a 1 step further in the funnel there for that brand. They've already committed in one way. So they're likely going to buy from that brand. And then also if they wait like a week to like make their decision, maybe they don't need the sweater right now. They got a wedding or a cool podcast coming up, but it isn't happening quite yet. And so they kind of put off the decision. They've probably already forgotten those 2 other competitor brands. But the brand that they bought into the pop-up, then they're receiving emails. You're top of mind. You're just going to default. You default are that brand. Even if they don't open the emails, you have that top of mind effect there where the person's seeing your notifications and everything's there. And that's to play into like another thing where I'm like, why I say send emails 4 times per week or so is because you want to be top of mind. Even if somebody isn't opening all of your emails, they're seeing your name in the brand. You're going to default as that brand that people think of in your niche.
So huge.
So I think that's an very interesting point. And so we obviously have the templated pop-ups, and then you have like every platform has pop-ups. What makes your pop-ups work so well? If somebody hasn't seen your sort of pop-ups, like what makes your forms perform so much better than others? If you could walk through like some numbers of how much better your guys' forms perform, and then also why do they work so well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Like, can I share my screen and show you maybe something? Or?
Maybe. I think so.
Yeah, I think like why like what are best practices, right?
Yeah.
And like whether or not you use Alia, like these are just good practices for pop-ups in general.
Yeah.
So firstly is like you can see this. This is like a full screen pop-up, right? This is Tom's UK. They're a pretty massive shoe company. I think they're public. Yeah, they're pretty huge. They're using Alia, but regardless, they have this nice pop-up, right? Number one, like it fits the brand aesthetic. The idea of asking you've got an exclusive discount, that actually works better than saying you've got 10% off, even sometimes better than saying you've got 15% off. The idea of exclusivity, of a mystery, is to excite customers enough to be more willing to put in their information. Now, this really interesting thing right here, they ask a question, which is like, what are you interested in? Right now, this data all flows into Klaviyo or PostScript, or like all the data flows in, right? So like,
you can segment that list is going to get tagged with what the person's interested in, the question they answer.
Yeah, and I'm sure Matt's can tell you like if you can segment customers well in those platforms, you can see make a ton more money. And then like let's say I answer men's, sweet. What they do here is they kind of off the bat show different content, like just a different picture, right? So just like whatever. Like if I answered women's, I would see a different picture. Okay, cool. Then they ask for email, and then I'm prompted to go ahead and enter my email address. Cool, that works. And then they just do email, but of course you can do SMS too. They do like submit, and then what we do at Alia, and we're actually the only company that does this, but it is pretty interesting too. It's the idea of like micro commitment and like feeling like you care more about the brand and that you're more interested in the brand. So like essentially they have this really cool customer education thing here where customers learn a bit about the brand, and Tom's is a pretty like philanthropic brand that gives back to like customers and essentially donates shoes. So like it works pretty well with their ethos. And then the customers can go through this super quick journey and like get rewarded for doing so. So yeah, like and then you can also ask another question like, what are you shopping for? Again, this data goes into Klaviyo or whatever you guys are using, and then I also see different content based off that. So I'd see like content for stylists, trainers for him, because that's how I answer the question. And then finally, they put the coupon code in the email. If you put the coupon code in the email, you see a higher open rate. Oftentimes, we recommend our brands do that. And then the last thing they do, when they click on Shop Now, I'm actually taken to a specific LP based off of how I answered the question. So since I answered
interesting,
they then show me that, right? So like all these little things, right, all add up to the big thing, which is a really high opt-in rate. For them, I think they're seeing between a 13 and 16% opt-in rate before they were seeing a significantly lower one, right? So like by having a micro commitment, by having a full screen pop-up, better design, like all these little things just play into that number. The reason, Max, going back to your point of why do we see better numbers is because we have the knowledge and the insight from working with so many brands, and especially a ton of like 8 and 9 figure brands, to know, hey, these things work, these things don't work, and we're going to add this onto your pop-up because we know this is best practice.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that people ask me as well is like, why have that question in that first? Why, like you think like, okay, you're adding another step for the customer, like that's going to hurt conversion rates. Why do these people convert higher when we ask them a question first?
Yeah, so if you can ask the right question, like if it's a question someone wants to answer, and that the question that showed is one someone that wants to answer. We have a few golf brands and baseball brands, right? This one baseball brand is like, what's your position on the field, like or it's like, who's your favorite player, like stuff like that. People just love answering. The idea of reciprocity, right? Like the brand, you giving something in order for the brand to give you something, tends to work too. And we've done a bunch of A/B testing with the mini quiz, like the question in the beginning and not without the question. Pretty much across the board, it'll win in opt-ins and also in conversion rate. So it's pretty interesting. Like if you don't believe me, just try it out because it'll probably work.
Yeah, that's what I say every single time to people. And I think there's just like a couple psychological things at play there. For one, I think it's, I don't know the name of the psychological bias, maybe like customization bias. Like somebody, if something is custom to them, they're going to be much more likely to buy it if it's custom for them. And so they're getting this question for them. It's also, I'd say it's some sort of like newness bias, because a lot of brands out there also don't have this pop-up form yet. And so it's kind of like everybody's so used over the past few years, it's just like 10% off, enter your email. Seeing this new sort of pop-up that's interactive, it's like, oh, well, this is cool. Let me answer this question. And so you get a high opt rate. Like our clients that do this quiz, we get like almost 40 to 50% of people interact with that first step, which is crazy. Versus like a regular form, it's like 3 to 4%. So you're getting a lot more people to interact. And you can also use that data in that first question, even if they don't get the email address. You can see like for that brand, for example, you can see how many people are shopping for men's, women's, and kids, for example. Exactly. So we have those two things. And then we also have low barrier of entry. It looks low barrier to entry. It doesn't look like somebody has to enter their phone number. So that's another psychological trigger where it's like, okay, all I have to do is answer this question for 10% off. Heck yeah, I don't have to give my email. Then they answer the question and then email comes up. And so it's low barrier to entry. So you get a lot more opt-ins on that first step. And then we get commitment bias, which is then the next psychological trigger where this person already answered this question. They're so close to getting their exclusive discount. They just have to enter their email address. So they're like, might as well enter my email. I already answered this question, whatever. And so so there's a lot of different psychological things at play there that I think like kind of like stack up and really perform well. And one question I wanted to ask you, getting a little bit more granular, is we have a couple different variations of a micro commitment sort of step, which is essentially the step before asking for the email address. What numbers do you typically see of doing that sort of like quiz where you're asking, hey, tell us what you're shopping for, versus something where it's just like, hey, you've got a discount. Do you want it? Yes versus no. Because that's another micro commitment that you can do. What sort of success have you seen with that? Is there any situations where it's like, it probably makes sense to just do yes, no, or it makes sense to do this sort of quiz?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have some clients who just do the yes or no versus the quiz. The quiz will typically outperform. I don't think there's really a situation where you shouldn't ask the question, honestly, because even if you don't want to segment them in Klaviyo, like let's say you just like don't have the capacity or you don't have a max on your to help you with the segmentation, but you still get good zero party data. And like we have pie charts in Alia where you can see like how are people responding, and like that pre-purchase survey data is honestly really interesting to take a look at. And like if you're going to see higher opt-in rates by doing that rather than a yes or no question, like to me it feels like a no-brainer. Plus you get some cool insight into your customers that you would otherwise wouldn't have gotten. Yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer. Some brands just like, I don't know why they would do it, honestly, but most of our brands don't do it.
Yeah. In most of our tests, it's, it's better conversion rates on the quiz, but we do have some brands where it's just like yes or no if we can't think of like a good quiz question.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and so do you have any like best practices on the quiz sort of question? Because there, for like Tom's, for example, that brand, there are all sorts of different questions that you can ask. What makes like a good question to ask? Is there a certain number of answers that works well? Because I assume if you put 10 different answers for this person to click, that's not going to perform as well than if you give like just a couple of options. I'd be curious to hear like what makes a good question in that first step that gets the highest interaction.
I'll put another example here. It's a brand called Nike Strength. So yeah, it's like one of Nike's brands. It's also
working with Nike.
So yeah, they're a pretty cool one. But they asked the question of what are you shopping for today? Right. So that's another one you could ask. Like, what are you shopping for today? That's a good one. And then a brand like if you know creatine gummies, they sell gummy like creatine, right? Like whether it's gummy form, whatever it might be, like they sell creatine. So like, and it's pretty obvious what you're here shopping for. You're shopping for creatine. Like there's no really need to ask any question like that. So instead, they asked like, which scientifically proven benefit of creatine are you the most interested in? Like increased body comp, muscle recovery, increased strength, enhanced cognition. So like, understanding from your customers, like, hey, okay, you're obviously here shopping for our one product. What about this one product stands out to you? Is it like?
And I like how it's also proving the product as well.
Yeah.
It's saying what scientifically proven benefit.
Yeah.
So you have all these benefits. What one more specifically are you looking for?
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, I think asking a question that also like somehow is also a bit of an ad, like it just like makes your brand seem even better or cooler. You're like, what are you shopping for? And if you're on Nike Strength, maybe you didn't know that they have dumbbells. You didn't know they have like something, and you're like, oh, it's like also low-key becomes a cross-sell, which is kind of interesting.
And something that I like too is you can send that person to that directed like landing page or directed based on what they answer. And that's something that you can't do in some other pop-up platforms, like specifically like if you go inside of a platform like Klaviyo, if that's where your email marketing is and your sign-up form is directly in Klaviyo, you're a little bit limited on what you can do like after the sign-up form. You have to, we're not going to be able to have like a sort of like bottom success message but also when the person answers, we're able to direct them to the page of exactly what they answered. So that's interesting. And something I also noticed on some of the brands as well is that first step is you need to answer that first step. There's no other option. Did I see that for Create? And so you get, and so there's no option for the person to X out of that pop-up form. Like they have to answer that. It is a necessary part of the customer experience, or is there a way for them to not answer that?
In order to get the reward, you have to answer it. We always have an X to just X out of the pop-up. I'm not sure that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we always have an X. Because you could have it without an X. However, it does get kind of like, I don't think I was zoomed in fully, but like if you don't have the X, you actually hurt your CVR. So like while you want to make sure that people are filling out the form, you also want to make sure they can they obviously see an X button, or else they might just be like, what's going on here,
Yeah. Especially if they're a past buyer too, if they've already claimed that discount. So we always want to have that X.
Yeah, and like also for the older folks, like they just get like confused easily. So we always throw a pretty big X in there in case folks don't wanna.
If that's like the demographic of the brand.
Yeah, exactly.
And something that we do sometimes, where it depends on the brand if they want to be aggressive, instead of doing an X, having like a closed form button, because sometimes if you have, it's probably best practice and you're going to piss off the least amount of people if you have that X in the top right corner. But sometimes what we'll do if we want to be aggressive and get people answering this pop-up form, then what we can do is take away that X and have underneath the form, we have a no thanks closed form.
Yeah.
Or if you want to be even more aggressive, no thanks, I'll pay at full price.
That
button.
Yeah.
And by changing the button to be below on the bottom of the form or like below the options, what this does is it makes it to where the person, a lot of times when people see a pop-up form these days, everybody's seen pop-up forms. Anytime you go to a website, most of the time they're going to have a pop-up form. Usually when you see a pop-up form, your thumb is already moving to the top right corner to that X. You're not even, it's just already moving. And so if we remove that and just put it into a different place, you could put it on the left side of the pop-up as well. And we've seen better opt-in rates. Not sure about website conversion rates. I don't have the data on that. But if you move it to like below, it forces the person to look at the pop-up and be like, okay, do I want to interact with this? Oh, no, there's a button down here. And that's like a little bit more of an aggressive approach. Is that something you've messed around with at all?
Yeah, we have. Like, I think we also, so within our app, we also track on-site CVR. So like, not only can we track like, hey, what's the opt-in rate, but like, how is this specific variant of the pop-up affecting CVR? I think like those tests are good to do with the caveat that you just need to be looking at the on-site CVR. And if you don't have we're actually the only pop-up tool that shows on-site CVR in our A/B testing variants. But like, if you're not using Alia, you should just like keep an eye on the CVR because you don't want like that X to be like randomly hurting your sales,
100%. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, cool. And then now I want to go to like the next point, which is kind of on the offers side of things. So doing sort of like, what is that acquisition offer? Because we saw create right there where it was get a discount up to 46% off. And then we had the Tom's one, which is get an exclusive discount. And then we see some brands where it's like 10% off. We see some brands that's like 11% off. We have some brands that are $20 off. Walk us through like and then we have some brands where it's like get free gifts at checkout, get a mystery gift, where it's like you get a free like starter pack. I'd be curious to hear what sort of numbers or some sort of direction to give brands or different things you've seen perform well on the offer side, because the offer is a very big lever as well.
Yeah, for sure. What we kind of tell our brands is like, you just give whatever discount you feel comfortable doing. We don't want brands to be stressing about, giving like a 15-20% offer because they believe that's going to really boost opt-in rates. But if that's going to be like if that's going to hurt the bottom line, like just don't do it. Because with Nike's strength, for example, they do unlock early access instead of doing a discount, and they actually see like a higher than 7% opt-in rate. I think it's 9%.
Very strong for no discount. Yeah.
For no discount, right? And it's like, all right, like I've just collected customers for free. All right, great. If you want to do, and this is some real sauce right here. If you're giving a discount that's 15% or less, try out the mystery discount instead of doing you've got 15% off, because you'll probably see a higher opt-in rate. Now, if you're doing 20%, you can A/B test it. I think 20% might win. If you're doing 25%, 25 will probably win over exclusive discount or mystery discount. If you're like discount cautious, totally cool. But like that shouldn't mean that you should have a low opt-in rate. Like we have brands that do free shipping and it crushes because we have some good language there of like, you've got mystery offer, something like, mystery offer works well, exclusive discount, personal item, like all that stuff. Even if it's like something small, even if it's free shipping, even if it's 5%, like you can get a very solid opt-in rate, like 12 to 18%, and you don't need to be stressing about like your margins.
Yeah, 100%. Because there's all sorts of different things. You can do percent off, you could do dollar off. And so a lot of times, so that's a really good point. We see the same things. If it's 10%, 15% is usually when we'll A/B test 15% versus a mystery discount. But a lot of times if you say mystery discount, you're going to get more opt-ins because people are like, oh, what's the mystery?
Yeah.
And so that's when typically we'll do, but usually if it's 10%, we're almost always going to have a mystery discount. And if you also are worried about margins as well, another thing that you can do is instead of doing like 10%, is you can give a dollar off offer, because if you're doing 10% and somebody makes a $500 order, that's going to be $50 off that you're giving this person. Whereas 10%, or if you give $10 off, for example, then no matter what, if somebody's paying $100, a low AOV versus like 500 high, you're saving margins rather than doing the 10%. So typically the rule of thumb is if your AOV is above $100, do dollar off. If your AOV is below, then do percent. But all sorts of things that you can test there. Do you have any brands, or do you have any numbers on the sort of ones that do a sort of like some sort of bundle offer where it's, hey, sign up and get like free gifts or access to this mystery bundle, something like what Athletic Greens does, for example?
Bundle brands. Honestly, I can't think of any that do that. Like more like subscriptions, or?
Yeah, so like Athletic Greens, for example, they have a bundle. It's their acquisition bundle. So you get a free shaker, you get like a free travel kit and some other stuff. And the sign up form is just like, hey, you have this bundle. Is that sort of anything that you've tested before or seen some brands do?
Yeah, so Hostage Tape has a bundle too, actually. So they have something interesting where they do that. So like they do free tape essentially, like, and it's like a bundle with some other products. I mean, I can kind of show you how that looks. They do like, do you want free tape here? Cool. And then they also do like, do you want 50% off select bundles, right? So they have like essentially for the initial offer on the pop-up for going through email and SMS, they offer free tape. And then as I mentioned, like the customer education piece that we do, the site visitor can go through this and get a larger reward for that. Yeah, like I think it's interesting to try out. I think the idea of boosted rewards for that, like let's say you put in your email for the first part of the bundle and then your SMS for the second part of the bundle, like that can be kind of interesting. Yeah,
and that was a good micro commit question as well, is who are you shopping for, myself or someone else? That's a super easy that any brand can do that. And that's something that we do as well, where if you want to have that micro commit but you don't know what sort of question, you're going to say, who are you shopping for, myself or someone else? And that's also good for like gift giving sort of brands as well. So that's interesting. Yeah, I've seen, we have one brand, for example, they have an acquisition offer where it's a bundle. And so but they didn't frame it that way. It's just like a bundle that somebody can buy on the website. And there was no pop-up or anything promoting that. And the bundle offer it's $10 off what you would get if you paid full price, and you get 2 free gifts. So we just plug that into the pop-up form. We're not throwing away any extra margins. We're just telling them the offer that's already there for them. Hey, do you want $10 off plus 2 free gifts with your first purchase? Yeah, it's just highlighting that bundle. And then boom, you don't have to change any of that. And that's another thing for brands that are cautious about throwing away margins, for example, on having a pop-up form. A lot of times they already have a discount that they're giving away for the first purchase. Or a lot of brands have free shipping above a certain threshold. If a brand doesn't want to give a discount, sometimes we'll have the pop-up offer be what they are already giving away free shipping. We'll say, hey, do you want free shipping on orders above $50? And even though everybody has access to that, we're putting that behind the pop-up. And that can get opt-in rates as well. And so that's something where every once in a while we'll do that.
Yeah, and actually, like for Black Friday, that's our recommendation to our clients is don't gate the discount. Instead, have the pop-up be announcing the discount, and you'll still collect a pretty large chunk of email and SMS subscribers. But since the main intent of Black Friday is like people are already pretty intent heavy. Let's highlight the offer in the pop-up, but like make the offer available to everyone on the site.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, perfect. Makes a ton of sense. So we've walked through a lot of stuff here on pop-up forms and the success, different offers that you can run, and some strategy behind that. I do like the bundle offers. I think those perform well. Nice. And then you can do dollar off, percent off. Yep. And if you're under like 15%, 10% on your discount, or you don't think it's something super effective, then you can do a mystery discount. That's something that a lot of brands can do. Do the quiz. We went through all that sort of stuff. So we kind of have talked through like the pop-up forms and everything. I'd be curious to talk through overall just like e-com brands and their funnels, and how they're acquiring customers and what the typical funnel looks like and how that's like changed over time. And if there are specific funnels that you've seen work well for brands, like are you creating pop-up forms for dedicated landing pages for some brands? Like some brands, they'll run ads to a specific landing page. Are you creating like custom pop-up forms for that? I'd be curious to hear like, or do you recommend brands just have a general pop-up form on the website and ads just run to the general website and then we get their form there? I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit about the funnels. If you recommend brands keep it simple, if you go more complex with like the sort of like routing and stuff, I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit about the funnel, the e-com funnel, what some brands are doing wrong and what they could be doing.
Yeah, for sure. So I think like off bat, there's some pages you probably want to hide a pop-up on. So like it's good to have those exclusions in place. One is like if it's coming from an affiliate and like the UTM already has the discount code, like like already being applied into the cart from the affiliate, you probably don't want to pop up because you can cannibalize what the affiliate's offering, and the affiliate could get kind of mad about that. So like hiding it on specific UTMs is good, and then showing it on other UTMs in a different manner. Right, so like I think one of our brands has like a coming soon page, right? So like on the coming soon page, they show a different offer and different graphics and copy than what they would
maybe
show.
Like a coming soon page, you'd be sign up for early access.
Yeah, exactly. But like they have like their actual evergreen offer. So yeah, like I think the idea of like siphoning off customers based off the UTM they're coming from and showing them different pop-ups is a really good strategy. I wouldn't say like you need to do it, you know what I mean? Like I'd say like for brands who really care about the UI, like their CX, do it. But if you're like okay without having like a super specified experience for each customer, which not all brands need to do, like it's okay if you don't have it. So like in general, like we don't push it super hard to our customers. However, if they're like, hey, Sean, like we want customization based off UTMs, that's when we'll start building out those things.
Yeah, 100%. It's like the 80-20, because also with these different pop-up forms that you're going to have, you probably need to set up custom email flows for these sort of different pop-ups on the site. So that adds a layer of complexity where you have to make these extra emails. And then you have to make sure that those customers are being taken to different lists based on like the different pop-up and trigger those. So it can be effective, but it's kind of like it's a little bit more complex. Like, for example, like what we see a lot of brands with like their funnels do is you have sort of like your general website funnel, and then you have your acquisition website funnel where all your ads, if you're a brand, all the ads are going to like a listicle, for example. They're driving website traffic to a listicle or an advertorial or some sort of like specific page dedicated just for acquisition. You might have a different pop-up in a welcome flow for that. Like for example, if you have a welcome offer like Athletic Greens, they have this acquisition offer. So they could have something specific for a website going specifically to that offer and then have a welcome flow specifically for that, and that could perform really well. But you could also have your general website one where maybe it's not highlighting the bundle. It's just like 10% off. If somebody like stumbles across your website or something, you could have things defer there. So there are a lot of different things that they could do, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, I agree.
Cool. And I kind of want to go a little bit more broad here with these last couple questions and kind of like forecasting out what we think is going to like change in the next like 12 to 24 months, specifically with e-com. Since you're working with so many brands, you're seeing how some brands are growing. I'd be curious, you can take this however you want. You could talk specifically about pop-up forms. You could talk specifically about whatever, or e-com as a whole. Like, where do you see the e-com landscape going in the next 12 to 24 months with everything that we got going on in the world? Any things that you see that could be changing, any things that brands should be prepared for? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, I think the answer is kind of obvious, and it's just AI is going to just take over every single part of every business, right? And like, I'd say in general, like my advice would be like just be on top of what are the new AI tools, and like don't be afraid of them, because these things are only going to get better over time, and they're only going to get used more over time. So like if there's something in AI, like an AI tool that you think is cool, like try to explore it, try to see what it is, because you don't want to look back in 24 months and realize that like, oh, all my peers are like doing this AI thing, which I was like too scared to try out. I think it applies to like every business owner and every employee all over the world. Is just like get used to bringing AI into workflows and get used to using AI in like literally every single thing that you do, because other people are doing it today, and if you're like not doing it, you might fall behind and just like have costs that you don't need. And like I don't think it's today that all those things are going to happen, but I do think that like it's better to be knowledgeable and be on top of like new tech than to like just be scared of it and be like dismissive of it,
Yeah, 100%. And what do you think a couple of those like use cases you see kind of like taking over that maybe somebody should go on Google or YouTube and look a little bit more on in terms of like AI?
I mean, I'm not like in the acquisition side of e-commerce, but I know AI ads are like huge, and like there's a ton of stuff you can do with AI. Like I've just seen people make like these crazy ads that would have taken like $30,000 to edit and produce, and now you can do it like literally with like the Google's new AI engine. Like it's so crazy. So like yeah, I think AI ads is like a huge one. And then I think just like internal automation tools for teams is huge. Just like not needing to bloat your team with employees as just like as a business owner, because like you're AI first. Like Shopify sent the memo of like before you make a hire, see if you can do it with AI. I think like bringing it into your team's workflow is crucial, and that's not even just an ecom, that's just like in the world.
Yeah. 100%. Cool. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that we don't even know exist that is going to pop up. Like we can like make predictions of what this all is going to look like, but there's some stuff that people are building that we don't even know, and we don't even know its possibilities. And 100%. It's just going to like change so much, and the use cases we don't even know. So that's like on the e-com side, just be on top of AI. And then also, I'd be curious to hear, like specifically with Alia and Popup forms, gathering, email, and SMS, and your specific like app and service. Where do you see your guys' service going in the next 12 to 24 months? Like what sort of stuff do you guys have on the table? What are the things that you guys are going to be focusing on?
Yeah, so I think like we're going to stay as a pop-up tool. Like we want to dominate this specific thing, which is the pop-up, and just continue to be extraordinary at this and not move out of it, and also stay in e-commerce. The thing we're really focused on is like building, how can we like build really interesting experiences for customers that feel like specific to them? How do you show copy that feels specific to customers? How do you show it at the right time with the right offer, right? Like maybe you coming from this specific source, you need 10% to convert, I only need 5%. We shouldn't both see the 10% offer. We shouldn't both see it at the same time, and we shouldn't both see the same copy, because we're two different people. Thinking about like, how do we show these pop-ups correctly? So like instead of them being a hindrance to the customer experience, and instead of them being seen as annoying, they're genuinely helpful, and they're genuinely like what a customer cares about. Making sure that's extremely low lift for any brand to try out. So like you turn on Alia, and our AI just figures all these things out for you. So you don't need to play around with it. Like you don't need to like go in the back end and mess about. You're just like, okay, I turned it on, and because our model is getting stronger and stronger, like we know who to show it to and what the messages should look like. But you don't need to be, the brand or the person that's using our pop-up doesn't need to be like in the back end, like fine tuning all this stuff. It's getting fine tuned by itself.
Yeah, epic.
Yeah,
epic. Good stuff. Good stuff. Awesome. I want to close it out with a couple other like just general business things. And specifically like with your experience, because you guys have scaled like crazy over the past year. It's been fun to follow along. And so just like general business, like overview, like advice. And I see like some of your posts on Twitter as well, breaking some of it down. I'd be curious, like growing at the size that you guys do, specifically in like software. What have been like some of the breakthroughs for you in terms of business operations in growing the business? Like the high leverage things that you've found that have really helped you get to where you are today. If you could just like boil that down into a couple things, or maybe just one thing, I'd be curious to hear like what you found in your personal experience.
I'll boil it down to one thing, in my opinion, which is urgency. Just be urgent. Like if you're faster and you care more and you're willing to do the things that these large corporations are not willing to do, you will win the market. Like we've uprooted companies that have been in the market for 10 to 15 years, like industry vets, and came in at 22 years old doing this and like uprooting these like corporations. And like it's because they're not urgent enough. And they're not like, they don't have the same drive, tenacity, and the care that me and my team do, right? And I think by like bringing that urgency into every single part of the business, both as the founders, and then when you hire, you put that into the culture, like every single level of the business, every single person is urgent as hell, and like they just want to win. If you can create a team of urgent folks who like know that speed is what's going to get us to the places we need to get to, like you'll beat out these incumbents who don't move with urgency and they move with relaxation and they don't really care. Yeah, I think like understanding that like when it's your own business, and if you have the drive to like be urgent and be extremely rapid, like you already have a pretty massive leg up on other people who are not urgent and don't care enough and are complacent. Like to me, that's the winning formula.
Love it, especially when you're startup and you're trying to like grow fast. And I see it firsthand with you guys. Like we bring a new brand to onboard, we're like, hey, we got this brand, boom, like literally someone on your team is going to respond within like a couple minutes, and we're like, do you guys ever sleep? And so you guys have that, and then it's like, okay, these new forms are created. What do you guys think? We're like, brother, how did you guys already do that? So you guys move with speed. And so, yeah, there's a lot of questions that we could take that we could go off of that of like, how do you have urgency in your culture, and how do you boil that down to the team? And I think you kind of like went over that a little bit, where it's like, every part of your process to embody that within your culture. Because obviously, like, you could have the founders be super urgent about stuff, but you could have team members who aren't. And so I think kind of the way you kind of like phrase that and how you have urgency across the company is every part of your operations, every part of the company, from hiring, I'm sure, like the onboarding systems, and whenever a team member internally is messaging like the founders, you guys are responding and you are urgent on top of everything. And so I think a lot of it is lead by example in everything that you do, and then your team catches on to that and it builds within your culture. Would you say that's kind of like the best way to embody like that urgency within the company?
Yeah, just like, let them see you do the things you do every day. And if you're an urgent person, which most business people are, like, they will just be like, okay, damn, like my CEO is moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Like, I don't think he'll be happy if I'm slow. And that's good. And one thing I do actually is with all my employees, I tell them the founding story of the company and what it was like in the early days and how we got to where we are today. Like, I think that it's important for them to know that, like, it hasn't always been like this, right? Like, it wasn't always this. We weren't always growing fast. There's times when, like, in the beginning where nobody wanted to touch our product, and like, that's fine. But like, I think it's important to, I mean, what I do, Max, maybe you can try to, is like, I have one-on-ones with my team members, and I even like tell them literally, this is how I built the company. And like, they're just like, okay, like, I don't want to mess this up because of how much this guy cares about this.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to mess this up for him,
Yeah, and they want to rally behind you, and they want to rally behind that story. People want to be part of something growing fast, and they want to be part of something awesome. And so if you clearly paint that picture and that vision, and the way you talk, you're like, we want to be the biggest, we're dominating these people, like, then that rubs off on the team, because then they're like, shit, I want to be a part of that. And so then they show up with like that same urgency. And so it's all about like finding those people who naturally have that, but then also cultivating that and showing them that is the standard of how we do everything. And if you don't want to be a part of it, then cool. And also, just when you're fast growing and you have this sort of energy, those sort of people naturally come to find you and then will join the team. So that's super good. And that's a good reminder as well. I think there are a lot of things that, like myself, reflecting that I could be way more urgent on. And move with a lot more speed, and specifically make sure that every part of our employee onboarding process, like hiring, you set that precedent of, we do things fast, we get shit done. So it's not like, oh, we have this onboarding, we'll get you like within the next like couple weeks, we'll get you this. No, it's like, we bring somebody on, we get you this. Yeah. And so right off the bat, it's like, okay, this is a culture of getting shit done. This is a culture of 100%. Being urgent and making shit happen. So 100%. I love that. Awesome. I think that was a great way to end it. And as far as like where people can find you, where people can find the platform, what could you walk us through that a little bit as we close things out? Yeah,
sure. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Sean Aurora, and then on Twitter, my handle is @I am Sean Aurora. I post stuff about like Popups, but I also just post stuff about like life that I think is interesting. So yeah, I think it's like kind of fun. And our website is alialearn.com, ALIA learn.com. Yeah, like if you come from the podcast, I'm happy to give you some kind of trial for my buddy Max. Don't worry.
Of course. Yeah, and I invited Sean on here because I love the product, and our clients love it because they get badass results. And so every single brand that we work with, we're trying to get them on Alia. So I fully recommend it, and that's why I wanted to bring Sean on. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Lots of good stuff there. Lots of sauce, and I don't think this sort of stuff is on YouTube. Like, some of the stuff that we talked about, this isn't stuff that
I agree
is actively like available for people. So this was a lot of good stuff. So appreciate you coming on and being willing to share all that. And I'm sure everybody listening got a ton of value. So we'll close this one out. Thank you so much for the time. And see you in the next one.
All right, dude. Keep crushing.